Recently, I was watching Matt Colville's amazing series on the history of Dungeons & Dragons, in which he goes through every version of the game, explains a little bit about it, and then builds the same character using whatever its character creation rules are. It's a really nice way to explain the differences between different editions of the same game, and it made me think, what if I did the same for one of my favourite games? Necromunda. In this series of videos, I'm going to go through the different versions of Necromunda over the years, take a look at the rules, releases and background, and attempt to build a gang for each, the same gang. Though in this video that might prove a little difficult, because we're going to start before it was ever called Necromunda, with a game called Confrontation. Confrontation was a skirmish-level role-playing game set in the universe of Warhammer 40k, the Rogue Trader universe, and it was released as a series of articles in White Dwarf magazine throughout 1990 and 1991. The setting for the game is the planet of Necromunda, the same Necromunda that we know and love, though Confrontation takes a slightly wider view of it. Necromunda is a hive world in the Imperium, one of many hive worlds in the Imperium, a polluted world of mines, factories, refineries and processing plants, with a population in the thousands of billions. After 15,000 years of habitation, the majority of its surface is a desert of industrial ash, and the population are crowded into huge, towering urban complexes called hives, built up and up into the atmosphere. Central administration and law and order are said to be impossible on such a scale, and so daily life is built around the clan. Independent family structures that run various sections of the hive and compete for territory or industrial contracts. It's a feudal system, at the top of which is the Imperial commander, Lord Helmore, who rules over the planet in the name of the Imperium and enforces the Imperial tithe on its fearful population. Fearful presumably because of this weird cherub face. Look, there's a load of amazing John Blanche art in here, but he must have been on a cherubim roll because everyone in it has the face of one of these weird little goblin children. Part of this is Necromunda's weird little native population of flying babies, the Caryatids, who are attracted to prestigious and successful individuals and are considered good luck charms. Anyway, creepy babies everywhere. The hives themselves are divided into levels, from the rich spire at the top through the hab layers and factory levels to the Undercity and Forbidden City at the bottom. In Confrontation, you play as the leader of a gang, waging illicit war for either hive territory, cash, or prestige. These could be clan gangs fighting for industrial sabotage or living space in the hive proper, or any one of a number of other organisations and groups. Brat gangs are bored nobles from the spire, come down to hunt commoners. Tech gangs are guild bondsmen and traders. Scavies are shanty dwellers from the ramshackle towns that cluster around the bases of hives. Nomads are wandering tribes from the ash wastes outside the hives. Undercity gangs are described as primitive outcasts. Mutant gangs roam the undercities, and finally psyker gangs hide out away from the law. There's also rules for Venator gangs, which are like bounty hunters. They don't get any background in this part of the game, but then they pop up in the rules. Various models were released to represent these gangs. Marauder made some, usually 4 monopose models per gang, and then Citadel released another selection, sometimes doubling up on the same gang, but their models had metal bodies and then space for posable plastic arms. The models released don't match the name of those gangs. These guys, early Ratskins and the Maniac gang, I think are intended to represent Underhive gangs. These were supplemented by some Rogue Trader Hive World Ganger models that I think might have already been released by that point. Anyway, so far this is the Necromunda we're completely familiar with a few big changes. But the place this game differs is in the rules. See, page 1 of Confrontation lays out what they expect from this game. Confrontation is intended as a role-playing game version of 40k, but since they didn't have time to write one, they took an existing combat system that Brian Ansell had already been writing and reskinned it to 40k. This role-playing style intention pops up throughout. The gang descriptions feature the social class of the gangers and the motivations of the gang, but it's the rules where this is most evident. The actual game rules read like a really crunchy combat system from an 80s RPG. In Confrontation, fighters have 4 stats: Prestige, Initiative, Weapon Skill and Ballistic Skill, all rated on a percentile system like its contemporary Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. During the game, your gang is split into groups, each of which follow the orders of the highest prestige member, and then the game runs a bit like a Dungeons & Dragons combat with an initiative sequence. In each round, you complete all the random housekeeping stuff, and then characters act in order of initiative score, each character being able to complete 4 actions in their turn. Once everyone's done all their actions, you resolve all the hand-to-hand combats that result and then move to the next round. There are some weird twists though, like high initiative characters can just delay their turn and jump in at any point in the rest of the round, or any character can snap fire really inaccurately at any point in the round but then suffers a massive penalty. There's also a list of initiative modifiers that includes a penalty for wearing Terminator armor. Okay, and while it seems fun, it does seem like it might be really hard to keep track of. This isn't helped by the actions themselves, which are really detailed. An action is anything that takes 2 to 3 seconds, like aiming a weapon, ejecting a magazine, changing which hand an object is carried, saying exactly 5 words of command, and so on. The intention is to allow the characters to do whatever they want and make it easy to calculate how many actions it takes. The given example is that opening a can of beans takes around 10 seconds, so that would be 4 actions. But it does seem a bit like overkill. Like any good RPG of the time, there are tables for hit modifiers, cover, visibility modifiers, the chance of piercing somebody's armor and the part of the body that it hits, and range modifiers for every weapon that change roughly every 10 meters. It's busy. It's supplemented by some rules for trading and spending your cash, but there isn't really a campaign system or missions. Presumably that was all up to the players to figure out. So this is the bit where I'm going to build the gang. My intention was to try and build the same gang in each version of Necromunda. The Springsteens, my double denim-clad Orlok gang. But this is a publication by Games Workshop in the early 90s, and so the way a gang is generated is by random tables. Seriously, you only choose what sort of gang you want, the rest is random. The prestige of the leader determines how many people are in the gang, and they all have random weapons and stats. There are so many dice rolls that I kind of assume that's the balancing factor, that everyone's just rolling so many dice that it kind of all evens out in the end. God knows how I'm going to make them match the models I have. Alright, here we go. So the first thing we do is either randomly generate the type of gang, or we can pick one. There's no Orlok yet, so I'm going to go with a basic clan gang. Then I need to start with how prestigious my leader is, Bruce himself. To do that, it's d6 plus 6. Okay, middling. Bruce has a prestige of around 9. 9 is now the maximum number of people that can be in the gang, and then we roll another dice to see how many followers he starts with. That's 3. So looking at the table, that means he starts off with 5 followers. Next, we need to roll their prestige to figure out whether they're raw recruits, hardened gang fighters, kind of the equivalent of gangers, or henchmen. There we go, I've put them all in this table. I've got 1 henchman, 3 gang fighters, and 1 raw recruit, and I've given them all names. Next, we roll up their initiative, weapon skill, and ballistic skill using the tables. So there we are, there's the rolls. Have to say I'm quite surprised at the massive variation, but then it is a percentile game, there's a load of modifiers. That's presumably why the ballistic skill is also quite a lot higher than all their weapon skills, because there's more to hit modifiers. At this point, I would also add modifiers to these scores based on what sort of gang I am, but since clan is the default, they don't get any modifiers. Next, it's equipment. Each character gets a number of rolls on their own table, but since equipment can be swapped out at will, it's easier just to make all the rolls and divvy it out. It's probably also the only way of making sure I have the right models. Here we go. Okay, so that's a lot of pistol weapons, a lot of stub guns, and a couple of... There's at least an auto gun in there for an Orlok gang, but you know, I can see why the Citadel models now had replaceable arms. Next, we generate our stash, which is all the spare equipment the gang have. A clan gang gets 6 rolls on the stash chart. That's d6 frag grenades, so I roll 5 frag grenades. Then... there we go. As you've probably guessed by now, in this game you need to keep track of how many bullets each character has. I have 3 power packs for energy weapons, a clip of bolt ammo, and 50 rounds of conventional ammo, and some frag grenades. Next, I generate how much cash I have using this table. So that's 27 credits. And finally, I roll for skills. Your leader and henchman could both get skills, depending on what you roll. So my leader gets Nerves of Steel, and my henchman gets Nothing. The very last thing I would do here is to see if any creepy babies follow Bruce around, but his paltry prestige of 7 means I'm well below the level required. Now, that's a really weird mix of weapons and equipment. I have loads of energy power packs and no weapons, and very little conventional ammo and lots of guns that use them. Thankfully, after building the gang, I'm allowed to go trade, and depending on what's available, I can exchange equivalent items. First, I need to choose where I'm going to trade. I can only choose one chart, so I pick guns, because there's a lot there I can't use. I roll a 5 on the trading chart, which means I get to generate 4 items to trade, and I find a las pistol, a las gun, an auto pistol, and a melter gun. I think I want all of those. I get rid of 2 bolt pistols, both hand flamers, and a couple of the stub guns, and buy the lot. And with a bit of shuffling around, I managed to vaguely build a selection of models that I own. Here they are. Through some cunning trading, I managed to get a usable gang. Are they any good? No idea, but at least I can field them. Time to start calculating those modifiers. So there we go, that's the Springsteen's version 1. Bit random, managed to vaguely sort it out with the trading. There's slightly fewer models than the later games have, so maybe that evens out the complexity from earlier, but I still think this is a long and complicated game to try playing. Next time we'll move forward to a time when Orlocks were possible, the original box release of Necromunda. Thanks for watching.